Let me start the
Oh,
record.
hello.
The difference a week makes. That
Yeah.
bright yellow orb in the sky. So different from the rainy every single day last week. So it's not, I know it's going to get cold again, but it does give us a little bit of excitement in Pittsburgh because there's so many people in Pittsburgh that have seasonal affective disorder. That's when they don't get enough light, so they feel depressed and down and miserable and don't want to do anything. And when we get that sunlight, people lift out of that depression. So psychologists love the sun after a long, gloomy stretch. So let's hope at least I don't mind if it's cold, if it just stays sunny. We're good in Pittsburgh then. So welcome back. I just want to go over a few things before we finish the section on human growth. We started it last week, so we don't have a lot to do in that section. We're going to start the social psychology, but I did post the syllabus, like to kind of clean it up a little so you know what's coming up and what's due each week. So that's on Blackboard, but I want to go over that. So let me get this shared. Okay, get that out of the way there. Okay, so as you can see, you should be able to see my screen now. Um, Tonight we're going to finish the human growth and development stuff. That's for test 3. And then we're going to start the social psychology. We won't go through the whole thing. I purposely designed this night to be like if we had to get caught up or to give you some time to work on your papers because I know you're working and you have classes and you have family and everything else going on. So I did build it into the schedule to give you a little bit of time. There are still a few people that haven't given me a topic. So you really need to give me a topic. Like before next week, you have to give me a topic or I'm going to be giving you one. And it's always better when you pick your own. People tend to do better, write a better paper when they pick a topic that they're interested in. So there are plenty of topics, or if you're not sure, you have a couple ideas, send me an email and we can talk about some, possibilities that would work that would make you interested in the topic that you would do well. That paper should be an easy A because you have the whole semester to work on this. So you could see today we're going to do the human growth. We're going to do a little bit of the social psychology because I promised you that we would just do the test the next time so people didn't have to worry about listening to the lecture, having a break, and then taking the test. We'll just be taking the test. So when you log in, just like last time, I will open Blackboard. I will open the test. You can download the test. Same as before. You can highlight or you can write your answers on a piece of paper. Make sure your name's on the paper. A couple people forgot that the last time, so I had to track you down. So please make sure you put your name on the paper. Make sure if you're taking a photograph that I can actually read the letters on the photograph. I had to have a couple people resend their picture because it was too hard. It was too dark. So, even if you have to move away from your computer somewhere to take a picture so it's bright enough that I can read it. I'll grade it like I did before and send you your scores. Remember, I always send you your scores, so keep track of your scores. If you are doing the extra credit, you need that extra credit in this week. If it doesn't come in this week, it won't count. Okay? Then the following week, we're going to do the rest of social psychology. You'll be working on that video entry for your journal on past, present, promise. It's really, really important that you watch that video, and I highly recommend you watching it while we're doing the section on social psychology, because it shows most of the experiments we talk about for that lecture, and you'll actually get to see the experiment. It will make more sense than waiting to the very end to do it. You said it's not like I'm going to collect that paragraph, but if you want to do well on test 3, you'll watch that video because it will explain in much more detail. You'll actually be able to see the experiments we're talking about in class, and will help you do well on test 3. There's an activity that goes with the social psychology that goes in your journal. It's not a video, because we're going to analyze some commercials, and you're going to have to find a commercial on YouTube that you want to analyze. And you'll know exactly how to do that because we're going to do it tonight. So you can use tonight when we have the extra time at the end of class. You could use tonight to look up your commercial, and you'll know what to do. And then we have spring break. Important with spring break is we don't have class, so you don't log on that Monday. But the following week, we'll finish the social psychology. All your papers are due by midnight. I don't take late papers because you've had many, 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 many weeks to work on this paper. So all your papers are due that night. If you would like to do your presentation live, there are 3 nights that I have set aside time during class for you to do your little 4-minute presentation. You do have the option of filming the presentation and just sending me the link. You can film them on YouTube, you can film them on Zoom, you can film them on your phone and just send me the link, or you can do it live. I know a lot of people get nervous, even though you guys are an awesome group. You seem to support your fellow classmates very well. So I don't think you have anything to worry about being nervous with this group. But think about what you want to do. If you do hate presenting live, you have the option of filming it. It's only 4 minutes. It has to be at least 4 minutes, no more than 8. But 4 minutes is fine, and you're just summarizing what you found in your paper. So you're not reading your paper. I know you all can read. What I want to see is what you learned from your topic that you researched. And you're just sharing with the class what you found out, because most of those topics that you've chosen are not topics that I actually talk about in class. So you're basically the teacher for 4 minutes to the class. You don't have to make a PowerPoint. You can have one for yourself, but you're just going to talk to the rest of your class about, so if you picked ADHD, for 4 minutes, you're going to tell me everything you learned about, ADHD. That's all. So it's not this big formal presentation that you have to dress up for and, have little note cards, and you're just going to talk to the class about what you learned. Okay, you just can't read your paper. So that starts as an option on the 6th, and then you'll have an option of going again on the 20th, and then on the 27th of April. So there are 3 times that you have that option of doing it live. So if you want to do it live one of those days, all you have to do at the beginning class, when I ask, is there anybody who wants to do the presentation live? We'll do the presentations first, get those out of the way, and then do the lecture. This way you don't have to worry the entire time, okay, I'm so nervous, I'm going to be presenting in a little bit, to the point that you're not really paying attention to the lecture. That seems to work well, especially when we're on a Zoom. And then test 3, which is only on 2 sections. It's the human growth section that we're finishing tonight, and then just the social psychology. So there's only 2 sections that you're tested on for test 3. And then we'll finish the material for the last couple nights. We'll be doing personality, motivation and emotions, and stress. Notice on May 4th, that's a makeup exam. That means if you missed any of the tests, so if you missed test one and you still have to take it, or if you missed next week's class and you have to make up the exam, or if you missed the third test. That's the day because I have to make all new tests since I posted the test that was open for everyone to see. It's not fair to the people that took the test on the first time, if you had access to the test. So they'll all be brand new tests, same material, but brand new test. If you do not have a test due that night to make up, you just need to turn in your journal. You don't have to meet for class. Only people are going to be on Zoom that night or anybody who has to make up a test. Or if you want to take your final exam early. Our final exam is officially May 11th on Zoom. That's that last three sections, the stress, the motivation, emotions, and personality. I don't know what the rest of your schedule looks like for your final exams. And we'll have all the material in by the 27th. So if you would like to take the final early, you just have to let me know because I'll have to email you the exam. I won't be able to post it to Blackboard. So that night I would email you the exam. You'd take the final, and then you wouldn't have to come to the May 11th class because I know that's kind of late in the finals. So it's up to you. You don't have to take it early. Otherwise, everyone else will be taking it May 11th at 6 o'clock. But if you do want to take the final exam early so you get it out of the way and don't have to worry about it while you're studying for all the rest of your finals, that will be up to you. But you got lots of time to think about that, what you want to do. That's your choice. So that's the syllabus. Like I said, I tried to clean it up so you know exactly when everything is due, what's due, when it's due, and what we're doing. Next week's test, and let me stop the share here so you can see me. So next week's test is on learning, memory, and intelligence, and they all go together, so it's a lot easier to study for than the first test. Learning will be, classical conditioning, Pavlov is dogs, the, what's the unconditioned stimulus, the conditioned stimulus, etc. So if you did that worksheet already for your journal, you already know how to do that. It will be the operant conditioning, instrumental conditioning, and that one little slide on social conditioning. If you know that one slide, I remember I did a summary slide. If you know that one slide and you understand that, you'll be doing well on that portion of the exam. Memory, the three different memory stores, how we learn things, how we can remember. We talk about peg words, we talk about chunking material. So that's all the memory material. And then the intelligence material, which we finished last week. So all those different theorists, the Cattell and Horn and Howard, Gardner and Sternberg, you should know all those different theories on intelligence. Again, your PowerPoints are your study guide. If we talked about it in class, it's fair game for the test. There's nothing that's just out of the book. Now, we did have a suggestion on something you may want to do about making like cards on Quizlet to help you study. Do you want to talk about that? I think she's on.
I'm here. I'm trying to get the link so I can share it with everybody.
It's okay. I mean, if you send me the link, I
Um,
can always, if you send it by email, I can always just post it for you too.
okay.
So do you just want to tell them what you did so they know and as an option to study? Are you still looking for the link? Okay. So while she may be looking, what she did was she went to Quizlet and she took the PowerPoints and she uploaded them to Quizlet and it made study cards, flashcards, using the PowerPoints that we have in class. And she found that that was very helpful for her to study. And she just wanted to share that with you if you've never done that. It looks like it's fairly easy to do. Um, she'll give me the link. She'll give me an email, and I'll post it to Blackboard for you if you'd like to try that. Maybe some of you already do that. If that's a good way to help you study the terms for the learning, memory, and intelligence, I highly recommend it. But if that's not your favorite way to study, then don't think that you're required to do that. But it was her suggestion. She said it helped her to study the material. And I always like to share information that my students have found as ways to help study, especially on that topic, which is learning, memory, and intelligence. So when she sends me that, I will post it. I'll post it to the top of the page of Blackboard, so you'll be able to find it uh, very quickly. So let's get started, and then if we have some time,
Okay, I'm back. I don't know what just happened. My whole thing like just shut off out of nowhere. I'm sorry.
that's okay. We're gonna get started on the lecture, and then
Okie dokie.
I'll have you do it. Once we stop this part of the lecture, then I'll have you talk to them. But I just kind of shared basically what you told me. But
Okay, and I
it,
did. I was able to post a link in the for everybody to see the. I don't know what happened to my screen.
that's okay. Oh, there it is. I see it now. So yeah, the link is in the chat. So if you need to, use that as link, I will still post it to Blackboard too. So if you don't get it right now, um, so answers to the questions that were in the chat. No, you don't have to make a PowerPoint. You're being graded on what you say, and what you wrote in your paper. So yeah, you're just sharing the information with the class. Um, well, you would have to tell me at least a day before the final for the question on the final, so I know to have a final ready for you, so I can just email it to you. So you can wait up until that day. I would tell me at least by 12 noon if you're going to do it that day or not. Um, if you don't mind waiting, if it came down to it at class time, just I wouldn't have it ready for you right at 6 o'clock. But yeah, you have until that day if you want to take the final early. You don't have to take me. Um, the extra credit TED Talks, it's on Blackboard. I mean, the titles are all there. All you have to do is copy and paste it into Google, and it will come up with a TED Talk. A lot of people did take me up on that, so that was good. That was an easy 15 percentage points. One person just sent me one, so they felt they only needed to do one of them. So you had your choice of doing up to five of them. But that has to come in this week because once we do test two, which is next week, I don't let you do the extra credit for test one. So you've had a couple weeks now that you could do that. And uh, you can make flashcards for yourself. Again, you just have to talk. It's not like you're if like we were in person, you have to get up in front of the class, and some people get really nervous. And I mean, you just be doing basically what I'm doing right now, which is just talking to the class. So yeah, you can have flashcards if you want. You just can't stand there, and do this. My paper is on schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a disease because that doesn't tell me you learned anything. It just tells me you can read your paper, and it, it it gets you that same feeling of what a psychologist would be doing if they were actually doing research on the topic. They come back and they share with the rest of the psychological community. So if people want to try the experiment to make sure it's working, if they have questions about it, then you're doing what a psychologist does. That's the purpose for the presentation part. And like I said, if you get nervous, just film it because you can redo it as many times as you want until you get it right, and you just send me the final link. So nobody will see the ones that are filmed except me. So you don't have to panic. I mean, if you would like other people to see it, I'll be glad to post your link to Blackboard, with your topic, but you're not required. So I'm giving you that option of doing it live, or if you do get social anxiety, and a lot of people do, to present, you have the option of filming it. So that's up to you. And you do have the choice of which of those 3 days you would want to present. If you're filming it, it would have to be in my email box by that last date of the presentations. So, but everyone's papers do the same time, you know,
How long does the presentation have to be, or like sending
four,
you like,
4 minutes.
okay.
Has to be 4 minutes at least, no more than 8. So, but it has to be at least 4 minutes. In 4 minutes, that's a good summary of a 5-page paper. It gives you enough time, and it gives people enough information that if they did have a question for you. And I don't expect you to know if somebody does ask you a question and you don't know the question, it's not gonna hurt you. I mean, I didn't expect you in a 5-page paper to become an expert in, like ADHD, or autism. But if you know the answer, you could easily answer it. But you're not expected to know every single thing about your topic. You just wrote a 5-page paper. If you wrote a book, then I would expect you to know everything. But yeah. Okay, no, the paper and the presentation are not due at the same day. The paper has a date. It was on the syllabus. Unless you pick that date. So again, the paper is due by midnight on April 6th. Okay? But if you want to present that night, on April 6th, then of course you would want to have your paper done before you did the presentation. Okay, we good? Okay, let's get started. And we're going to finish human growth, which is the rest of what would be like Psych 108. And let me get rid of this syllabus. Okay, so let me kind of review real quickly what we did last week. So we went through the start of life, so basic birth, male and female, genetics, zygote, embryo, fetus, the 3 stages of life. That would be something like I would test on, you know. Different teratogens, those are things that can harm the developing zygote, embryo, fetus, and we talked about those. We did different reflexes. You don't have to know them all, but you should be familiar with the different reflexes. We talked about temperament. We talked about how 15% of children are outgoing, so they're very approachable. and about 15% are more shy. They're more withdrawn, and the other 70% are kind of somewhere in between. And then we also talked about, vision is the least of the senses that develops early. It's usually around 6 months. We talked about their baby's sense of smell, baby's sense of taste, baby loves sweet. We talked about language development, and we talked about Noam Chomsky. And then we talked about some different types of language development. We talked about child-directed speech, also known as parentese, words that we would use with the child, but not with like an adult. So you wouldn't say to your boss at work, "Oh, excuse me, I have to go pee pee right now." No, you wouldn't say that. But you would say to your child, "Do you have to go pee pee?" So that's what we mean by child-directed speech. Telegraphic speech are like the two words, like got milk, you know, have food, just 2 words, 3 words tops. That's what we mean by telegraphic speech. It's a short amount. And there is a critical time period for learning language. And that's where we left off. So that's where we're going to start with Piaget. And again, I'm going full screen, so I won't be able to see your chat until I go back to look. Yes, I do want to share. Okay. So, Piaget, probably the most famous of the child psychologists out there. He's a stage theorist, not an age theorist. In other words, he says children think completely differently at each one of these stages. Sensory motor, which is like 0 to 2 years. Pre-operational is like 2 to 7 years. Concrete operations like 7 to 11. And then formal operations is from 11 on. So all of you are in formal operations now. And he says we can do different things at each of those particular periods of time. We're going to talk about each. He says we learn information by making schemas. So any patterns that we do, we learn. So if you think of step by step what you do when you brush your teeth, like do you wet your toothbrush first by turning on the faucet and then put some toothpaste on it, and then do you start brushing like your top teeth first and then the bottom teeth and then you rinse? Do you brush them twice? How many times a day do you brush? That would be your schema for brushing your teeth. And he says we develop these schemas for every single thing we do. And this is how we learn, according to Piaget. He says if something is very similar to what we already have in long-term memory, our schema, we call it assimilation. So let's say you got a new toothbrush. You got one of those Sonicare ones that runs on battery and you just have to kind of hold it there. You don't even have to work hard. Yes, I still have my bronchitis. But the new material, this new toothbrush, isn't that much different than what you did before. So we would assimilate, add to what we already have in long-term memory. Versus if it was something completely different. So, let's say you were in an accident and you had a couple teeth knocked out, so you had to get a partial that has teeth on it. So you have to take it out to brush your teeth, and you may have to use different things to clean it. So you would have to make an accommodation, a change to your teeth brushing schema because of this change to your teeth. So assimilation, when it's same, we just encode it with what we already have up there. If it's different, then we change what we have in our long-term memory to fit the new thing. So, as I said, sensory motor is 0 to 2 years. And the major achievements that occur during this time are object permanence. That means you know that something is there. It just doesn't disappear when you don't see it. So let me pop off here for a minute. So if you had, say, I had this bottle in front of kids, and if you have, a little toddler, maybe 1.5, and you covered this bottle, they'd be like, where'd it go? They wouldn't even try to see if it was there because out of sight, out of mind. Once you master object permanence, they know it's still here. So they'll start grabbing for it and, oh, there it is. Okay. Prior to that, you can do some pretty cool magic moves with kids because they'll fall for it. They don't realize that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And it's also why we say that dogs have the average intelligence of a 2-year-old because they've mastered object permanence. So that's a good way to try to remember that if you have an animal in your house, you could see if you cover something, if they're like, wait a minute, and they start pawing at it, then you know they've mastered object permanence. So even if you don't have little children at home, if you can get your cat to do it, they also have mastered object permanence, sometimes a little faster than dogs too. But you can try it on your pets if you don't have little kids to try. Okay, let me go back. They also can do imitation. So if you smile at them, they smile back. If you wave at them, they'll wave back the exact same way that you wave to them. It's always fun if you're in a grocery store and you have a young toddler in the shopping cart in front of you and you're just standing in line, so you kind of smile and they smile and then you kind of wave and they wave. They've mastered um, imitation. So that's what we see in sensory motor period. And then we move to preoperational according to Piaget, and that happens somewhere between 2 and 7 years of age. And this is when they can understand like symbols, things that represent something else. So like if I drew a heart on a blackboard, a child knows that that means love, but they couldn't explain to you in long terminology what love is. I could sing the song, What is love, baby? No, but they understand that that heart represents love. So at Valentine's Day, if a little kid gives you a heart, they're telling you that they love you. That represents something more. They can't explain what love is. We have adults that can't explain what love is, but they know that that heart and giving that to you tells you that you are loved. So mental representation. Egocentrism. There are two types of egocentrism. We have it now with little kids, and then we're going to talk about a different kind when we get to adolescence. Egocentrism here is when children think that you see exactly what they see. In other words, everything is from their point of view. So if I'm playing hide and go seek with my child, and my child is at this stage, and they haven't mastered this idea of seeing from someone else's point of view, they say, "Okay, mommy, you go you go count. I'm gonna go hide." And they say, "I'm gonna hide behind the curtain." So we're gonna pretend my sweatshirt is a curtain. but you can see me, right? Their eyes are blocked, so they think everything is blocked, like their entire body is covered because they can't see anything. So, if they're hiding behind the drapes and from their knees down or sticking out, they don't realize that you see from their knees down. They think you don't see them at all because they think you see exactly what they're looking at. It isn't until they've mastered this from seeing from someone else's point of view. This is when parents, you have to pull the, oh no, I don't see you anywhere. Where could you be? When you can see their feet and their legs, but you kind of fake it, for their sake. But eventually, they do learn that when they get toward the end of the stage, towards the six and the seven, they learn, hey, I have to cover my entire body, so I have to hide behind the couch or somewhere else where mom and dad aren't going to see me. Okay. Concrete operations, which is the next one. And again, that's from 7 to 11, according to Piaget. And there it is. They can take another person's perspective. So they're not going to be hiding behind those drapes if the drapes don't completely go down to the floor because they know you can see them. They can classify objects. So if you gave them a whole bunch of shapes and you said, okay, let's put all the red ones together, they can pick out all the red ones, all the blue ones, all the green ones. And then even within the shapes, let's say you have all these triangles. It's like put all the triangles together. Now let's organize all the red triangles and the blue triangles. And they can do that at this stage. Prior to this, they have a difficult time doing that. And conservation. Conservation's the big one. It's when they realize that matter cannot be, destroyed. It can just be changed in form. So if we had two glasses of water that have the exact same amount of water in them. They're complete identical glasses. And you asked a child, do these two glasses have the same amount of water? And they'll go, yeah, yeah, because they can see it. And then you get a tall, thin glass. And right in front of them, you pour the water into that tall, thin glass. And you ask them, do these two glasses have the same? And they're like, oh, no, no, no. This tall one has more water because it looks taller to them. And say, okay, well, let me pour it back. And you'll pour it back in that other glass. And it's like, well, is it the same amount of water here? Uh-huh. See, they can only do either height and width, but not depth. They can't do all three of them yet. So at that point, then we see, children learning conservation. If we had, let me give you an example of like a test question I would have. Um, Little Johnny tells his mom to order pizza for dinner, but when they order the medium pizza, can we ask them to cut it into 12 slices instead of 8 slices because he wants more pizza? Well, it's still a medium pizza, but the child thinks because the pizza has more slices, he's getting more pizza and he's not. And if, a child recognizes that, no, would have to get a large to get more pizza, then they've mastered conservation. And you can go on YouTube and type in Piaget's conservation task, and there are psychology students that have their children doing these tasks. So you can actually watch kids trying to figure this out. So that's what we mean by conservation. That that they learn that just because it's a different shape, or it doesn't mean that you took away some material, you just changed the form of the material. And then the last stage is, according to Piaget, the earliest is 11 um, abstract concepts, deductive, inductive reasoning, problem solving. You're in formal operations. You can think logically. You can sit here for a lecture for, 2 hours and follow along and understand. Prior to formal operations, that's hard for a child to do. So once you get to 11, you have kind of mastered that ability to think logically and help yourself focus and know when to take notes and things like that. Whereas when you were a little child, you didn't. You also can do reversibility at this stage. So if we had a basket and I put an apple, then a banana, then another banana, then an orange, then a pear, and I asked a child to take them out in reverse order, prior to this stage, they wouldn't be able to do it. But once they've mastered this stage, they can reverse their thinking. And like I said, deductive and inductive reasoning, problem solving, pretty much again, where all of you are. You wouldn't be able to take this Zoom class if you weren't in formal operations. Now, the problem with Piaget, he kind of underestimated children. And, a lot of people love his theories. They agree with his theories, but they don't agree with the ages because they've seen children have object permanence at 3 months old, not necessarily waiting until 2 years. So he just underestimated children. Lev Vygotsky looked at social interaction, and he says children learn from their environment. So Vygotsky is not a stage theorist. He is a social learning theorist. So he looks at everything, how a child can learn from, you know, their family, how they can learn from TV, how they can learn from being on screens. Like if, during COVID, when they were on Zoom, like we're on Zoom, um, they can learn from a whole bunch of different things. It doesn't have to be one person that they learn from, like a teacher. They can learn from, their friend how to play a certain game. So social interaction is important according to Vygotsky. He says children learn through play. What's the one thing that many of our schools have cut out? Play. They've cut out recess many times. And Vygotsky would be saying, no, 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 it's really important. They learn so many things from each other. But a lot of schools have cut that out so they can cram in another course that they read out of a book or have a teacher teach them directly. But he says we learn from each other. Harry Harlow and his monkeys. Harry Harlow talked about uh, comfort contact. What he did was separate baby monkeys from their moms, so they never really got to know their real mom. And he put them in a small room that had two surrogate monkeys. They were made out of chicken wire. One was covered with terry cloth, a nice soft material, and had a face, and the other one was a wire surrogate mom, same face, but it had a milk bottle attached. And Harlow wanted to see, you know, where would this baby monkey go as its mother, since there's no other monkeys in this room. And he found that the baby went toward the comfort, to the terry cloth. He may walk over and take a sip out of the milk bottle, but came right back and, stayed on the terry cloth monkey. That entire experiment is on YouTube. So you can actually watch that. You would just type in Harry Harlow's monkeys and you can watch the whole thing. And put this in your notes. This is the extra credit on test number 3. You're going to explain to me in your own words Harry Harlow's experiment. So I strongly suggest you watch the video on YouTube because then you'll get the 3 points for the extra credit on test 3. But that's for test 3. Okay. Mary Answorth, she said that there are situations where children feel comfortable and sometimes that they don't. They can feel like they don't belong or the person who's caring for them is not giving them what they need. And he says children can have a secure attachment, avoidant attachment, resistant attachment, or disorganized. Now, don't get lost on the last one because the last one is only like 5% of the population. Secure attachment is about 80%. In that case, the child was left in a room with a stranger, and when mom left, the child was visibly upset. And when mom came back, they went running to mom and they wanted to spend time with her. And they did. That's a secure attachment. They trust that mommy's coming back, and when mom comes back, all their needs are going to be met. And it was replicated with dads, grandparents, caregivers, etc. Avoidant attachment, mom would leave, the child would be like, huh, you left me like you always do. They don't feel that connection with that parent. And when the parent came back, they basically ignored mom. Like, huh, you left me. I'm not going to bother with you. That's avoidant attachment. And that's about 10% of the population. Resistant attachment are children that were, upset that mom left. But when mom came back, they showed kind of the avoidant attachment. At first, they didn't go to mom, but after a few minutes, they came back to mom. We call them clingers. They try to hold on because they're afraid. And then disorganized or 5% of children that don't show any particular pattern. That one was actually added. Answorth's original research was the top 3 here. They have to learn everything as a child. They have to learn their self-concept, their who they are, their gender identity. And by the time they're 3, even if parents try very, very hard not to teach any gender stereotypes, by the age of 3, kids know gender stereotypes, what little girls can do and what little boys can do. And you can do your best as a parent to try to show your child that it doesn't matter what your physical sex is, that you can enjoy playing with trains if you're a little girl, and you can enjoy playing with cooking sets if you're a little boy. It doesn't have to be the stereotype. But by the age of 3, they already know those stereotypes. Our culture has that so much ingrained. And we're Western culture, some parts of Eastern culture, it's even harder to break those stereotypes. Only women are allowed to do this, only men are allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do it together, etc. Moral development, Kohlberg, he says that there are 3 levels of moral development, and he gave 9 dilemmas to children to try to figure out, well, how do they decide if something's right or wrong? And the most famous one was the Heinz dilemma, where Heinz was asked, you know, if he had to steal a drug to save his wife's life, would he steal the drug? And this is, he tried to get money. He couldn't get the money. He asked the pharmacist if he could pay it on payments or work it off, and the pharmacist said no. I've had to scrimp and save for 20 years, so now that I have this drug that works, I'm going to sell it so my family can get what they deserve since they've waited all these years. So should Heinz steal the drug to give to his wife, or should he not? And the children did these dilemmas. They're all online if you'd like to read them. And he found that children fall into these three categories. And we tend to move up the categories the older we are. So pre-conventional is kind of like, are you a good person? Yeah, if you're a good person, you're gonna, steal it. But no, good people don't steal. So if you're conventional, well, if you don't steal it, people are going to think you're heartless. You let your wife die instead of trying to get the medicine for her. Or, no, you can't steal because what if you get arrested stealing and then your wife will be dying alone because you'll be in prison? Or post-conventional is, human life is a priority. It shouldn't be based on money to save somebody's life. Or, no, you can't steal the drug because if everyone just did what they wanted, if they just took everything that they wanted, we would have chaos in the world. If everyone decided that they were going to run the light, while the people going through the green light are going to get, smacked by someone who ran the red light, we would have chaos, and that can't be. So we have to have right things that are right and wrong. Now, there's a problem with Kohlberg's research. He did only use boys between the ages of 10 and 16, and only boys. But he applied his theory to girls also. And his research assistant's name was Carol Gilligan, like Gilligan's Island. Carol Gilligan did research on both boys and girls, and he found that girls morally reason differently than boys. Not that one is better than the other, just different. Okay? Boys use more logical reasoning. They look to see what the outcomes are going to be. Girls use more empathy and look at how are people affected because of a decision. And we're finally at adolescence. Adolescence, this should be the easiest part because you've lived through this. Okay? You're you're all in and past puberty. So this section should be the easiest part of the test because you've been through it, and it's not, like back when you were 2 and you didn't remember things. You remember what it's like to be a teenager. So puberty, girls go through their growth spurt 2 years earlier than boys. That's why they usually look taller than boys. And cognitively, they are developed. They're in that formal operations phase, so they can think. But we have adolescent egocentrism. So here's the difference between the two egocentrisms. So you can bet on the test, I'll expect you to know the difference between the one for the little children and the one for adolescents. Adolescent egocentrism falls into three categories: imaginary audience, personal fable, and peer pressure. Peer pressure, you know what that is. I don't even have to explain that. Imaginary audience is that they believe everyone is watching them all the time. So they're concerned about what people think about them. You know, what clothes they're wearing, what they're doing, what friends they're hanging out with. That's really, really important to them. And when this research was originally done, people didn't have cell phones. Now, we know people do film almost anything. So in a way, I guess they are being observed by by other people. But they'll decide what to do based on what they think people might see. So I can't wear these shoes. They'll know I got them from Walmart. Oh no, I can't wear these, Mom. I need the $300 shoes. And parents will buy them the $300 shoes. That's imaginary audience. They think that everyone is watching everything they do, everything they wear, everything they say, how they have their hair, even what socks they're wearing, everything. The scary one is personal fable. And personal fable means that they will try more risky behaviors because they don't think they can die. They just don't think they can die. So, I can take this alcohol and these drugs that I took from grandma's cabinet and take them together, and I'm going to just have a buzz and I don't have to worry about anything else. And we know that's not true. Or I'm going to speed around this bend at 80 miles an hour and it's a 25-mile zone, but oh, I can do it. Nothing's going to happen to me. And then they go down an embankment because they did that. Some people never grow out of personal fable. Some adults think that way also, that nothing can happen to them. And in reality, we know anytime you do some sort of risky behavior, something can happen. Mm. So, personal fable and imaginary audience, you should definitely know that for test number 3. Do they fight with their parents? Oh, yes. Adolescents will fight. They will argue. They will push back. And it's okay because that's what they should be doing at that time. They're becoming young adults. And you, as a parent, want them to become young adults. You don't want to be a helicopter parent following them around the rest of their lives, making decisions for them. You want them to be able to be young adults who can make good choices for themselves. So most of the fighting is in, you know, early adolescence, but it's about like stupid stuff, like what they're wearing. Why can't I wear this shirt? Well, because it's a little too tight. But everyone else is doing it. So and so's mom lets that type of arguing, you know. Why can't I stay out to 11? Because your curfew is at 10. But everyone else is staying out to 11 and I don't have school tomorrow. That type of arguing is what we see in early adolescence. Mid-adolescence, so now you're talking 15, 16, 17, um, more intense arguments, like really good fights, um, in the extent that, what do you mean I can't have so and so as a friend? They're my friend. You don't have any right to tell me who my friends are. I may live here, but they're my friend. That type of fighting. And once we get past, like into college years, we don't see that type of fighting pattern across the board. Sure, there still may be some disagreements with parents at this point, but nothing like the ones in, between 13 and 18 years of age. Adolescents have mood swings because they are basically hormones with feet. Their hormonal changes through puberty are really going berserk. And 1 minute they'll be happy, and 10 minutes later they'll be sad. And it sometimes it doesn't even make any sense to parents why they're sad or why they're happy. They don't get it because they're not a teenager. And parents will say, well, I was a teenager once. Yeah, you were a teenager once, but in a different generation. Because if we think Vygotsky, we learn from our environment. The environment has changed. What was when you were an adolescent isn't the same anymore. So depression is very common, mood swings, loneliness. And there's a difference between adolescents wanting to be alone. There's not a problem with that. They want some personal time. And adolescents feeling lonely or ostracized or outcast. That's when parents need to worry about their child because they do get depressed and they can get really finicky and sad, and they may not even tell you that's what they're feeling. But that's when a good parent knows and pays attention to what their child's doing. Again, they'll participate in more risk-taking behavior because they don't think anything can happen to them. And it's really important that parents always keep that open communication between them and their adolescent, because there may be someday that their child goes to a party and they lied to the parent and said, oh no, there's not going to be any alcohol there, there's not going to be any drugs. And they get there and there is, and they don't want to be there. And you want them to know that they can pick up the phone and call the parent and say, you know what, I need a ride home. There's some things here that I don't want to be here, and I'm sorry. And you have to be a parent who's open to go pick them up and bring them home because you care about them and you love them. You can always deal with them disobeying you, but right then and there, they need to know that you're going to be there for them so they're safe. Parents don't want to be hated. They don't. They just want respect. Peer relationships are important. Pregnancy for teenagers is down. Yay, right? That's a good thing. Teenage pregnancy is down. The bad thing is they're getting younger. So before we saw like 16, 17, 18-year-olds getting pregnant, we are now seeing 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls getting pregnant. That's an issue. So, yes, it's great that the pregnancy rate is down. It's not great at who's getting pregnant. Adulthood and aging. Now we're getting into maybe a little bit beyond your years and closer into my years. So you can't fall back on what you know, but you can think of your parents, and your grandparents, if that will help you remember the material. So your body's going to change based on genetics and environment. So, there are some people that are 85 and they look like they're 50. They don't have any wrinkles. They, like their skin is perfect. Their hair hasn't fallen out. Their teeth are perfect. That's genetics. Okay. Environment is what we've done to our bodies over the years. I think when I started the lecture way back when, I talked about my generation. If we wanted a suntan, we didn't have SPF 50. We had SPF 2, and it was just like an oil. and we would lay outside between 12 and 3, which is when the sun is the hottest. Also, the worst time to lay out in the sun without any skin protection because you're going to fry. My generation, a lot of people ended up with skin cancer because they did that. That's an environmental thing. They chose to do that. So now as they're older, their skin kind of looks wrinkly or almost like crocodile shape. And they may have gotten skin cancer because of that. That's something we did to ourselves. So that's environment, that's not genetics. But it's those two things, both genetics and environment, that will play a role when you get older. Menopause, for women, anywhere between 40 and 60, you'll have your last period, which means you cannot conceive a child. And believe it or not, this is the time period that most women feel the most free about having sexual intercourse because they don't worry about getting pregnant. Perimenopause usually starts in the 30s. There are, some women that will get pregnant. Their, you know, period doesn't end until their 60s. So up until that point, they are still fertile and still producing the ability to produce a child. Um, but as you get older, so do your eggs. So the older you get, the greater the risk of having an issue with the baby, that there may be some mental retardation. Perception as we get older, um, cataracts. If you don't know anybody who's had them, I always tell people if you have a little bit of Vaseline or if you have like some Vicks, and if you got a cheap pair of glasses and you kind of rub that on one of the lenses, try seeing out of that. Try reading a book or just a letter when it's all cloudy. And that's very common for people to get 50 and above. And especially if you were out in the sun a lot without UV protection. So my generation who didn't have sunglasses that had UV protection, it's not unusual that people my age, in my 60s, that people have cataracts and they can be removed, but it's something that's perfectly normal at that age. Your generation, you had a lot more going for you. You had the sunscreen, you knew all the stuff about ultraviolet light, UVA, UVB, to buy sunglasses that had that protection and wear them. Wear sunscreen even in the winter when it has snowed and the sun is out because you can still get the UV rays. We didn't know that. So we see, a large percentage of the older population having cataracts. Hearing loss, men more than women and earlier. So men typically early 50s, women late 50s, early 60s. Memory, when we did the whole section on memory that you're going to be tested on next week, remember we talked about uh, fluid and crystallized intelligence. It's the same thing for memory. Um, Things that we did before, we can recall. You can recall the birth of your child. You can recall your wedding. You can recall specific things, but you might not remember exactly how much cumin you have to put in that chicken in order to taste a certain way. You might have to look it up in the recipe. Working memory gets shorter, so our short-term memory at your age is about 30 seconds. At my age, it's about 25 seconds. And at about 75, it's about 20 seconds. So as you get older, you have to work harder to get information from short-term memory to long-term memory. And as I said, fluid intelligence, that's the problem solving. We can do it. It just might take us a little longer. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Crystallized intelligence, on the other hand, gets better with age because that's the sum of all the knowledge you've ever learned in your life, no matter the source. And, we've done longitudinal studies, which is long-term studies. Uh, People, for 40 years, they may have been in the study, starting when they were in high school, and they track how they've changed. And part of that is human growth and development. The course, if you're taking Psych 108, you're going to see some of those studies of what we found out, how people change as they age. And then we also do cross-sectional studies where we look at a particular age of a population, so all 35-year-olds. So everyone in the research study is 35. And how does that affect how they are aging? Remember Erickson's stages are those 8 stages. We talked about them, trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt. The last three are the only ones you need to know for exam 3. Intimacy versus isolation. And again, intimacy doesn't mean sex. It means relationship in psychology. So this would be around 25 to about 35. And do you share your life with someone else? Are you comfortable being close to other people, or do you prefer to be by yourself? Generativity versus self-absorption will be 35 to about 60-ish. It's getting pushed back later because people are living longer. But this is, you give back. If you're a parent, you're running your kids to basketball and softball and dance class and forensics and football. And at the same time, you're taking care of your parents who are getting older, who maybe can't drive anymore. So you need to take them to the store. Plus your kids are, so you're kind of, we call it the sandwich generation. You're kind of pushed from both sides. Or do you decide to be self-absorbed? No, I'm not going to do that. I just want to think about myself. I don't care about you and who you want to be. I'm only caring about me. So that can be part of that stage. And then the last stage for Erickson is integrity versus despair. And this is like 75 and above. You know you're going to die. I mean, we're all going to die. Um, when you get to that age, can you look back on your life and say, I had a good life. I had a good life and I'm happy with it. And Erickson says you're going to die with integrity. And if you look back on your life and you're not happy with your life, you maybe cut some bridges along the way. You were working all the time, so you never had a chance to really enjoy your children. So now that they're older and you have time and you'd like to spend time with them, they don't want to have time with you because you never built that relationship. So you look back on your life and there are things you can't change. So Erickson says you're going to die in despair, a grumpy old man or woman. Personality is stable through adulthood. So the personality you have right now, everyone, is the personality you're going to have when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60, when you're 70. If you're easygoing now, you're going to be easygoing as an older adult. If you're, miserable now, you're going to be miserable as an adult. And we also learn how to control our emotions. You know, if something makes us sad, we don't just bust out crying right there. We've learned to deal with things that make us sad and things that make us angry, and we develop more mature emotions. Okay, so I know that was a lot, a lot of information there. Let me end this slideshow here. Okay. Anybody have any questions on any of that? That's not to the third test, so we have plenty of time for you to ask me questions about that. But we basically covered Psych 108 in 1.5 classes. So if you go on to take Psych 108, you're going to just get that lecture basically expanded into 16 weeks and in a lot more detail. So, any questions? Okay. So we're gonna do and I am gonna end early tonight. So we're gonna do the commercial activity and then you'll be done for the night. So you can use your time to do some research on your topic and everything. But I do want to get that out of the way because that takes some time. And like I said, I didn't want to put it in front of the test next week. So we're going to just do it now. So how about if we take just a little 5-minute break? Run to the bathroom, grab something to drink, and come on back. And then I'll probably be doing the commercial thing for about 20 minutes, and then you'll be done for the night. So let's just take a little 5-minute break, and I'll see you in 5.